starting the last session of FURIC. We had 2 long and very insightful days of discussions. My name is Lusine Badalyan. I am the Senior Election Advisor with ODIHR, and it is a real pleasure to moderate this session, which is co-hosted by ODIHR and EPD. I would really like to begin by expressing my sincere appreciation to colleagues from EPD for organizing this event, but also for inviting ODIHR to co-host the session. Of course, meetings as these, they provide a very invaluable opportunity to exchange views between practitioners, academics, and policymakers, and we value a lot this opportunity. As many of you are aware, ODIHR pays a lot of attention not only to the observation, but to the follow-up of recommendations, and the focus of this session is therefore very important for us because the follow-up to recommendations and implementation of those, as we have heard during previous discussions, is very important. This session will explore the opportunities and risks that social networks bring for elections. We will focus on lessons learned, good practices, and ongoing challenges in the digital sphere of elections from the perspective of international and citizen observers, who will share their experiences on assessing the impact of online campaigning on electoral integrity and on the implementation of related recommendations. We will also hear views from the oversight body for online campaigning and challenges that they are facing in this field, and also the point of view from researchers and how they could contribute to all of this. And to discuss all this, I'm delighted to introduce an outstanding panel today with us. We have Tatyana Hilscher-Bogussevich, external consultant with OSCE ODIHR. We have Domenico Tuccinardi, executive director, H Foundation. Sona Ayvazyan with Transparency International Anticorruption Center in Armenia, and Magdalena Wilczyńska, who is director of the Protection in Cyberspace Division, National Research Institute of Poland. And maybe I would like to start with a question to Tanya, drawing on your recent experiences on assessing the impact of online campaigning, and I know you have 2 recent really good experiences with ODIHR on that. What are the challenges, lessons learned, and also good practices maybe that you come out with from the perspective of international election observation in terms of looking at online campaigning but also drafting and coming up with the recommendations in that field?
Yes, hello, thank you, Lusine. Hello, everyone. Really super happy that this is my 3rd FURIC conference, and I was just exchanging thoughts with Domenico, coming for the 3rd time, but on behalf of a 3rd organization, twice as a citizen observer organization, once as international. I think is in a true spirit of partnership that we would like to encourage. So I'm happy to be here. And yes, now to the topic of the session, I think I would try not to repeat or maybe summarize various challenges and risks that we've already been discussing during these 2 days. I think I'll try to focus indeed on to look at things from the perspective of ODIHR's election observation experience, how the methodology has been adapting over time to how we capture what is happening in the online domain, and what are indeed sort of the learnings that we have so far. And to start with, I think it's important to say that we really have moved on as an observer community, and speaking specifically on behalf of ODIHR, it is important to recognize that we're really much further than where we were just a few years ago. Where things have started initially, we've been investing a lot of time into developing tools and the methodology for actually how to monitor campaigning online, so that we would at all understand what is going on in this domain and how are electoral rights at all affected in the online environment. So that was a mammoth task on its own, and I think We are already better at doing that. Maybe it is not yet optimal, but we are definitely better in doing this. But what is also very important is that our work has really evolved into a much more comprehensive assessment of the entire digital ecosystem and of the environment. So what today ODIHR missions are asked to do, and really missions of all the sizes, from small to large, is to first of all do the social network monitoring, which is limited, which is focused on a limited sample of stakeholders and of platforms, but also really to go far beyond that. We are being asked to examine the entire digital environment. And so in the latest reports of ODIHR, you would actually see that there is a new section of the report that is now out there that is looking into the legal framework for how the digital environment is actually regulated. You will see analysis on advertising, on spending, on the national mechanisms for countering FIMI, DIMI, disinformation, cyber attacks. Also efforts, but maybe also the needs in terms of ensuring digital literacy. So this evolution definitely shows us a very simple thing, that something that we've all already said multiple times, is that it is very clear that elections are no longer taking place only in the physical space. They have moved on into the online domain, but so did observation. It really has moved into the domains that we haven't been occupying before. And so with this, let me just share three observations that I have from applying this approach indeed on several of the recent missions, election assessment missions that I have been part of. One thing that I find interesting is what I see sort of as a extraterritoriality dimension that we are seeing. And what I mean by that is that major platforms and VLOPs in the European context, they have become an additional key stakeholder for us as observers. But the thing is that they actually do not often have local presence in the country, and they still are extremely difficult to reach out to. What comes on top of this is that significant obligations of social media platforms, as we've been discussing this already yesterday, they actually come increasingly from supranational instruments like DSA, TTPA, AI Act, and Code of Conduct on Disinformation. Yeah? And so what is happening is that we as missions, we are usually accustomed, or we have been accustomed to work with national stakeholders and on the national contexts or on the national legislation. And this situation basically requires us to adapt to adopt a bit of a different mindset in terms of who are we actually engaging with, and that is also applicable to follow-up. So for instance, I think open questions for me are, should we be addressing recommendations to the tech companies? Can we do that? Do we have the mandate for that? But also then how, if we do, how do we follow up on those recommendations? Does this mean that we would all of a sudden need to be traveling to other capitals rather than doing the monitoring and follow-up work in the country itself? So for me, that's an interesting and perhaps still an open question. Second comment I have is that obviously the monitoring landscape and the needs have also been evolving over time. And as mentioned, a few years ago, we were really focused on trying to come up with at least some sample of observations, of our own observations of how campaigning is happening online. What we are seeing today is that there are very often in the context where we observe, there are very well-established, experienced civil society organizations and specialized practitioners and researchers that can do and do deliver far better and more comprehensive social network monitoring than any mission, which is time-bound and resources limited, would ever be able to deliver. And so this obviously creates opportunities. Yeah, this enriches our data set, enriches our findings, but it is also a challenge because we, with our limited observations, we have to make sure we're not contradicting the bigger picture that is out there, that we will never be able ourselves to draw, and to make sure that we benefit from the complementarity in the best of the possible ways. And my third observation is related to the challenges in assessing effectiveness or impact of various measures. ODIHR observers are now asked not only to look at what national institutions are doing in terms of, for example, if the measures that they deploy, that they can really detect or address disinformation, if they're ensuring the removal and moderation of the problematic content, and if they can indeed ensure transparency of advertising online. Now the challenge is, the observers are supposed to look not only at what is being done, but whether these measures are actually also effective. Now, the reality is that even the best of the digital experts on our teams, they would never have such level of expertise, understanding, but also access is the issue, in order to be able to actually judge what is the effectiveness of different things that have been deployed. So with this, just to conclude, I think ODIHR's experience does show that digital campaigning is no longer a side chapter in election observation. It is definitely a core arena where electoral competition is taking place, but which requires methodological innovation. It requires us to explore new partnerships, but also it necessitates us rethinking what is actually the traditional concepts of jurisdiction and accountability as we look at things as observers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Tanya. I'm sure we'll have later on the possibility to ask questions and maybe express thoughts on what Tanya mentioned. But with this, and what Tanya also indicated, the importance of civil society, which is on the ground, which is doing the work while we are coming just not before, but 1 or 2 months before elections in the bigger missions, and the importance of citizen observers comes to play. And with this, I would like to pass the floor to Sona, and maybe to provide her input, her insights on the lessons learned, challenges that they face with regards to the same very issue, observation of online campaigning, and the challenges that you face with that. Thanks.
Thanks for the event, for the sessions, very interesting conversations. We heard several interesting, many interesting actually speeches, also brainstorming about solutions to the negative impact of social media. Hopefully this is bringing us closer to the actual solution of the problem. And indeed we need to keep in mind that social media also have positive impacts, and it really brought big influence in the civic and political life, and bringing closer voters to the political parties, raising the awareness. So we should find solutions which will not undermine these positive impacts, but rather tackle the negative ones. I'm coming from a country which in the recent years had the political will to implement electoral integrity and political integrity reforms, and passed many regulations which were mentioned by the speakers yesterday and today as possible solutions to the problems. We introduced beneficial ownership legislation, transparency of political party funding, oversight of political parties by a special entity. We have live stream debates with candidates that reach voters directly. We have media literacy courses broadcasted by public TV, not speaking about even non-governmental actors that are having multiple of activities like this. We have introduced measures that create equal opportunities for political parties on the internet campaigns, mandate existence of a service contract for internet advertising, mandate payment for from the electoral funds, and mandate labeling of campaign materials. And indeed, we are extremely happy with these changes, and those help a lot with the oversight and voter orientation. However, we still are not happy with the reforms. We still struggle with similar problems that other countries struggle who do not have these opportunities. And sometimes it's often it seems over-regulated. Some people complain that political parties particularly complain that it is over-regulated. However, we still have huge gaps which are not covered. First of all, it is obviously difficult to regulate social media in a way not to diminish the freedom of speech. The line is very fine, and it also creates a dilemma for election experts and non-governmental organizations to what extent we should push for reforms in order not to undermine this freedom of speech. Second, it is difficult to fully restrict the administrative resource misuse, also including through digital channels. The difficulty particularly relates to the time frame for restriction of the official campaign period, and official campaign period is usually short and obviously not enough. And also separation of media coverage of incumbent government activities from the actual campaigning is not easy. There are no regulations for third persons campaigning, and we heard about this a lot in these days. Here, our advocacy for policy change has not been effective, and unfortunately, we do not have much positive practices from other countries so that to learn and to use that in our advocacy efforts. I should say that most of our reforms have been passed with active engagement of civil society actors. And now, though in spite of all these reforms that have been passed, we cannot really ensure electoral integrity, just ignoring the role and behaviors of hidden networks. Unless this third-party campaigning is regulated, we cannot really ensure integrity of the electoral processes. So there are no adequate methods and instruments to monitor social media. Emergence of a large number of controversial pages and groups prior to elections on different media channels, huge volume of information, often chaotic nature of campaigns, they make it really difficult to monitor. And these digital campaigns could be possibly or successfully monitored through digital tools. However, those do not, some digital tools obviously exist, but when recently we were trying to find out what would be the useful tools for us, or useful platforms, we understood that we are coming across many problems such as peculiarities of political environments in different countries, the needs, the language restrictions. Another problem is that the interferences are often creative and well camouflaged. For example, especially foreign interferences, and it's not that easy to reveal. We recently have a newly emerged observation mission, which is called Armenian Vote, in translation, which mobilized thousands of citizens for observation elections across country 1-2 years prior to elections. It seems to be fine because it kind of raises civic activism, but those actually have a political agenda. They spend massive money already, as I mentioned, 1-2 years in advance. The funding comes from Russian sources. The funding comes through individuals, which are not supposed to report and made the funding transparent. And they are also engaged directly in the campaign, online campaign. And the Central Electoral Commission is not really monitoring, not really overseeing this campaign. And no authority stops them basically from this activity. And they appear to be out of regulations, basically. That's why nobody can really control them. Another problem is that enforcement of laws is rather poor. I mentioned many regulations that Armenia passed, but the enforcement is lacking, obviously. Sometimes also we see selective approaches. For example, paid mobilization of people for rallies through social media is differently treated for different political groups, which is questioning the political will and the integrity of the officials themselves. The jurisdiction of electoral bodies is limited to monitor social media. The CEC, as I mentioned, it does not follow. There are no authorities who would follow the social media, and basically all the viral campaigns, they appear to be ignored by everyone. It is difficult to assess the impact, as my colleagues mentioned. There is no methodology to assess the impact, and this creates a big problem for the advocacy of policy change. We cannot really convince the governmental authorities that this impact is crucial and they should regulate it somehow, they should follow and we would recommend possibly the international community to focus on these more and work on these methodologies. The observation groups obviously lack the due capacities that are needed. Observation cannot be the same as a few years ago anymore, and we need to learn new skills, methods, instruments which are not as easy to pass to our observer groups that we used to do with the regular traditional methodologies. And we need to engage new people with new skills, new knowledge, who would do the fact-checking, identify manipulations, identify misinformation, and analyze the online content. And with all these, observation groups lack resources needed to monitor online disinformation. These new skills, new people, new technologies, they will require more money. And with these anti-democratic developments throughout the globe, we do not have much hopes that we will get money. So these are our problems that we are facing now, and hopefully these events are really bringing close to the solutions to this.
Thanks a lot, Sona, for providing us an overview of the situation and your experiences from Armenia. It seems that what you were telling is in line with the discussions that we had. So what is the fine line between the regulation or over-regulation of the topic? What is the impact that we are having? Whether whatever we have is really implemented. So, and then the situation with the citizen observers and the lack of resources currently, which many are facing, is crucial. But we are observing elections, both international and citizen observer groups, and we report, we provide recommendations, but it is really interesting to hear firsthand from state institutions. So what are the issues that they are facing? Today with us is Magda. She represents an institution which was responsible for overseeing online platforms during very recent elections in Poland. And it would be really interesting to hear from you, Magda, what were the challenges and lessons learned for NASK, your institution, during the recent elections?
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me. NASK, being a national research institute, is supervised by the Ministry of Digital Affairs. And in January this year, we received a specific task from the ministry to mostly monitor and analyze electoral disinformation and to try to counter it as much as we can. Also to monitor and work with other institutions on electoral silence breaches. And our team, in the form it works as now, it was established more than a year ago. So as I think Lucas from the FR Lab said in the previous session, the major lesson is to start early. We established a team, we established methodology to analyze disinformation in general, but also to analyze disinformation related to elections. We established channels of communication with social media platforms, various of them. We had plenty of meetings. But we needed to establish as well channels of communication with our other institutions, and how they want to share information with us. That was a huge question. We needed to, moreover, have a capacity to analyze it. Because if you think about it, we needed to analyze the whole internet. And how do you eat an elephant, right? Bite by bite. And it wasn't also a question only about how to analyze the content. Content is quite easy. But how to analyze specific accounts, how to find hidden and silent bot networks before elections are going to happen. How are you going to analyze political advertisement with no non-transparent, in some cases, ad libraries, right? So we needed to establish a capacity within the team as well. And more or less we worked in So we had at least two different tasks on our hands. First would be monitoring the content, the accounts, and providing reporting. And we worked with platforms, reporting case by case. But we needed also reporting from the citizens. So we needed to raise awareness about us, about that information that any citizen could report that this information or an account to us wasn't a common knowledge. So we had at least 2 nationwide social media campaigns, also on TV campaigns that to only promote our existence. And as far as I can say about how it worked in Poland, awareness raising worked. When you compare the data from before, from the parliamentary elections, we had only 200, a bit more than 200 cases reported to us by citizens. For presidential elections, we had more than 6,000. But overall, the major work was done by analysts, because we overall reported to social media platforms more or less 24,000 content pieces or accounts. Not all of them were taken down. We are not seeing eye to eye with social media platforms when it comes to moderating the content. What we saw was the most effective was to report coordinated inauthentic behavior. When you find the bot network, when you can prove that this bot network is spreading specific content pieces, whether or not you can find the attribution, whether it's foreign or not, it's still a bot network. And platforms are taking those down. This year, I want to say we reported and taken down almost 18,000 accounts. So that was effective. Another thing that was effective was reporting to platforms fake profiles of candidates. We reported more or less 200 of those. 96% were taken down. But it's not that easy with breaches of electoral silence, for example. Because when we saw statements of our National Electoral Committee, they stated that even liking a post could breach the electoral silence. How would you even report that? So that was a challenge. So we decided that we will always go in favor for citizens, and we would transfer cases to police for them to investigate in any questionable cases. So we reported memes, but it's not so clear to see, and we reported those to police and to social media platforms. And obviously some investigations are still going on, but we wanted to report it in case it's a breach of the electoral silence, but we know that platforms not always are taking measures to take it down because they hesitate, because it might be freedom of speech. But within those 2 specific days of elections, it's very difficult to assess whether it's actual breach of electoral silence. What I also want to say is that the cooperation worked. We had bi-monthly meetings in a war room formula with many different institutions. We shared the data, we shared information about what we are looking at, what narratives are being spread. But still, the most crucial issue that was challenging was the clear communication. Because communication about disinformation in general, but also electoral disinformation, it's really challenging because it's not only about informing that something is false. Our reports mostly contain a lot of data, so accounts and reach. And if you publish this data, and if you work with Russian disinformation, you know that the other side will use this data and they will build another disinformation campaign based on this data. So there is always a question how much you should publish, because you want to, obviously, you want to say to the audience, to the citizens, that be careful. But without the context, it's a challenge. Maybe lastly, in 2024, we asked more or less 20 experts from all over the world how were their experience in electoral with this information on elections. And we try to, take those lessons and apply some measures. So we conducted training for political committees. We created a channel for safe communication with us. We created trainings for influencers, having seen what happened in Romania. We also conducted trainings for embassies that would conduct elections abroad. But still we struggled with the reach, how much we can reach those entities. And I do hope for next elections it will be more transparent and our education measures will be, stronger at least.
Thank you, Magda. What you mentioned, I think, highlights, very insightful and highlights the importance of what previously was discussed, the importance of education, voter education, the importance of cooperation and coordination at the national level, but also the importance of coordination and cooperation with external stakeholders, and then the difficulties, of course, of relationship, of reaching out to social platforms. Now I would like maybe to ask Domenico what the think tanks, what the researchers bring to the table on this topic from his perspective, because I understand that his organization was doing quite a lot of work in terms of research, and it would be interesting to hear the point of view of the researchers and how they can contribute to this whole process.
Thank you very much, Lusine. Thank you, EPD, for this invitation. And it's a small piece of research that was done last year in I think in occasion of the 2024 EEPD conference, part of the European Democracy Hub, which you can find the study online there. I mean, you'll have to scroll down quite a bit because it's a pretty prolific site. It's European Democracy Hub run by EPD and Carnegie together. The idea was really to go through one of these nice instruments that the EU has now put at disposal of the communities, and the data on their election follow-up missions are online, and you can just scroll it down and take all the recommendations one by one and see the state of their implementation. So really, in the spirit of broadening the overall FURIC framework, we're going to look a bit very fast through the implementation status of the recommendations of the EU, and see what kind of lessons learned maybe in the future can be brought to this fore, and maybe similar studies can be thought. I don't think I need to repeat that. Say the basics for the EU system, where recommendations are really the central piece of their work nowadays. They're the base of the partner, the dialogue, the political dialogue that each delegations conduct at the partner country. They link the two pillars of the support, so the observation with the electoral assistance and might come after. And of course, as I said, the data are available online. But what we did is basically break down all these recommendations. The follow-up instrument started in 2012. It became a standard evaluation system in 2015, and we took on board, we analyzed all the missions from 2015 to 2023, so 30 electoral follow-up missions analyzed, 830 recommendations. I could divide you in 8 working groups here. Each one will take 100 recommendations, if you like, so we can we can go through one by one, or we can also go very quickly through the results. The breakdown of recommendations reflects primarily what the interest of the EU observation mission is, which is half of them are from Africa, and the others almost equally divided from the 3 continents of operations. And the intervention type that these recommendations required is offers this breakdown at the end. Basically, 56% is about changes in the legal reform changes. Others, smaller components are just regulatory, 37%, and the other smalls are just actionable directly by CSOs or political parties, state institutions. So clearly, we already see that the great bulk of the work of the EU missions is based on legal reform recommendations. The global breakdown. The red is no change. And the rest is basically from yellow, and the different shades of green is what is ongoing, what is already fully implemented, partially implemented, and the brown is too early to assess. This is the official data you can find on the website of the EU. We had an interesting discussion with the ESLAs here when the study was presented, whether the glass is half full or half empty. I would say this is definitely half full. You might take me wrong by showing this data. But 10 years before, when we started this thing, so it was part of this movement starting recommendation, there was nothing of the sort. There was no information at all. There was no information, and there was no real follow-up. So, I would say that it's definitely a big result if half of them are considered. I'd like to go a bit more in details of the legal recommendation and the regulatory framework, because there is quite a lot of difference. If you look at the legal reform recommendations implying implementations that require legal reform, the outlook looks pretty bleak. However, this is pretty natural, I would say, considering the entity of a legal reform that cannot be actioned over a legal electoral cycle. The electoral follow-up missions normally take place 2 years after an election, so 3 years maximum. So having a legal reform in place within that framework is just really, I would say, very, very ambitious. So it's a different type of temporal horizon needs to be considered for this type of missions. The breakdown, I will not take you through that, but I think what is very important is to see the spike in traditional digital media, which is the biggest chunk of recommendations. If we extrapolate the final years from 2020 on, you will see that almost 50% of recommendations concern legal reform concerning traditional and, first of all, social digital media in general. If you look at the implementations requiring regulatory changes, the outlook is very different, because many of them are still ongoing, and there is a larger majority of recommendations implemented. I think this has a lot to do with the technical assistance project that EU has in place in many countries, and how the EU can more effectively impact this area of work, because it's work directed with the electoral management bodies in a country or with other civil society. So there is a more direct, for a technical assistance project, there is more direct way to impact and to have results over, let's say, an electoral cycle. The breakdown of recommendations is pretty different in the sense of the importance. A lot have to do with voter eligibility or counting the results, or generally DMB operations. All these results are available online in case you're interested in the EU Democracy Hub, epd.eu. A specific spotlight on social media recommendations. This was another piece of research done by Edge in occasion of the same research. Was Xavier Melan who did this specifically on social media, and we see, let's say, the breakdown of recommendations where fact-checking, disinformation countering is definitely what takes a lot of an interest. The approval enforcement laws to protect personal data, 14 cases, and restrictions on online freedom of expression, online campaign. These are the areas, the trends that are clearly spiking and will increase quite considerably when we do the study again in a couple of years. Yes, we will see probably 50% of those. The main takeaways for me that we know that the importance of observers' recommendations go well beyond their formulation. It's about or their implementation rate. It's really about their relevance for democratic process in a country, and we need to stay the course. The institutions need to stay the course. The observation community needs to stay the course, because it's a process might take 2, 3, 4 electoral cycle, and sometimes all of a sudden you can see results there. And another way that is already action by you is really focus on priority recommendations, rather than giving equal importance to 22 recommendations, including our report, but just focus on 3, 4 key structural systemic recommendations, or even less, where a real change sometimes can be made. And looking ahead, I mean, also the conclusions that we want to see and offer to the conclusion that technical assistance projects, obviously, with electoral management bodies are not the best way to promote legal reforms. And we should probably consider that these projects better suited for to promote operational and regulatory reforms. Sometimes this opens as well operational spaces for dialogue, unforeseen spaces at the technical level. Well, the politics sometimes is less felt. And however, for the long term, for the legal reform, obviously the center stage needs to be given to national CSOs, regional organizations. Legal reform advocacy is a job for national observers, for CSOs in general, and not for technical assistance projects. Wherever the EU has managed to support recommendations implementation, it's always been with the full ownership of the national counterparts. When the color has turned from the blue into national colors, where the national CSOs or the state institutions were fully bought into the process, and that's one of the other big takeaways. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Domenico. Very, very interesting. Before opening the floor for Q&A, a very quick question from drawing on what Domenico mentioned, maybe Tatyana and Sona. It was mentioned during the conclusions of the breakout sessions, the speed of the tech companies, that how quickly they are developing. And do we keep up with them, citizen and international observers, in terms of our recommendations, their impact, and how we formulate them, and to whom we provide? I mean, Tanya had a valid question whether we provide recommendations to tech companies and networks. So, do we keep up with this speed, Tanya and Sona, from the perspective of citizen and international observers?
I think generally yes, and I guess one way of looking at things is exactly as you have done, Domenico. What I guess for international observers, our main output are recommendations. Yes, so the question is, are we capturing what is going on, and then are we making the adequate recommendations on the basis of what we're seeing? And then again, speaking on behalf of OSCE ODIHR, I've done a similar exercise preparing for today, looking at actually how recommendations of ODIHR have emerged, sort of evolved over time, looking back to 2019, 20, and up to now. And the trend is very clear. Yeah? We had only about a handful of recommendations up to 2020, and then a surge in the number of recommendations that are related to social networks, digital environments. So we are hitting the right notes. And another thing that is very obvious is that, again, looking at the data, which I extracted from the recommendation database that ODIHR has, is that it is not isolated to any country or region. Recommendations are really being given across the board, which just shows that they are not unique to any specific context. What is also quite interesting, it was obviously interesting for me to see as well, is that the recommendations are also changing in their nature. They are no longer just exploratory and very generic and sort of tentative as they used to be, and they're becoming a bit more concrete. We start talking about DSA, Digital Services Coordinator, inauthentic behavior. We also start using the right terms. We've grown up and we've matured in the way we describe things, and I think that's important.
Sona, what are your thoughts?
I'm a bit more negative. I think we are not keeping the speed of the changes that the technology is developing. We are not able to have access to the information, we do not have the skills, we do not have the instruments to monitor properly. Possibly the timely thing related to the discussions or recognition of the issue. Yes, we started talking about this, but as observer organizations, I don't feel we are able to really monitor and reveal the issues and to analyze or have good knowledge and instruments for the analyzing and also for the advocacy, because as I mentioned, in some cases we also have lack of best practices, so that to push forward the reforms based on the best practices of other countries. So I wish we could be a bit more effective in this regard.
Thanks, Sona. And a quick question to Magda. So we provide recommendations. Those are there. How could those be useful for you? Or what do you think? How it can be of help for you? I know that there were also a lot of local organizations which were working in Poland during the elections, not only ODIHR. So how could we be of help to state institutions with our recommendations? We provide them. We say that we are ready to follow up on them. But from the other side, how it can be beneficial for you?
The best way to recommend something is to be as concrete as you can. So the trends you see, it's really positive. Because, for example, let's take the political advertisement and library ads, like how the transparent library of social media platform should look like. So it's searchable. So we actually have access to this data. We need really concrete requirements that we want to implement on social media platforms. And obviously we need more pressure with actually responding and understanding our methodologies. We need this understanding in social media platforms and how to talk with them about the moderation or content moderation or accounts moderation. It's still a challenge. Then we need to be really specific what we think should be implemented. And when it comes to NGOs, we obviously, as a National Research Institute reporting to the ministry, we have this challenge of sharing data and sharing reporting, but we love the data and we need the data, all the data you can give us. So we can then analyze it from our perspective, look into it deeper and take more measures to work with the content or with accounts. But also, we put so much effort in preparing before those elections, and I really mean it. Plenty of meetings, a lot of institutions, social media platforms, NGOs, influencers, whoever we could, we reached. And the recommendations usually came the day of elections or day after elections. What we really need is to look into those procedures that we established before, because we don't want to know that on the day of elections. We want to know that 3 months before elections, whether those measures that we taken are enough. And obviously you don't always can answer that because it's a difficult question, because we prepared for so many different scenarios. For example, we prepared for deep fakes that could be spread on the day of elections. This didn't happen in Poland, or not in this scale that we thought it could be. But still we needed to take those measures. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Magda. I've seen Rasto was raising a hand. We open the floor for questions, comments, maybe microphone for Rasto. Do we need one? Rasto, then Septimius, yeah.
Thank you very much. Many interesting thoughts. I think I'm more with Tanya that we already know, how to monitor. But I wanted to maybe flag a couple of issues that I see. I mean, I think that platforms really could be considered a stakeholder to receive recommendations. My question is based on what we can actually address these recommendations. I mean, they don't have any responsibility vis-a-vis international, organizations that observe the elections. So we are in a weak position to require this. I mean, here again, like coming back to yesterday's discussion, I mean, the EU is providing a useful toolbox that actually could be applied, but that probably does not apply for, I don't know, OSCE or, so I think here it's a very weak point. And also another one where I would also agree more with Sona is that, ironically, international organizations have even worse situation with access to data. So, I mean, this is funny situation that we as an NGO got almost full access to meta data, and our colleagues could not really use it when they were working on missions because we had problems. I mean, ODIHR doesn't have access to data. And you know, I mean, okay, I'm not gonna start speaking about the EOTS, the whole. I mean, Francesca is not here, but that is a story on its own. She's there, okay, so she can maybe tell the story. Maybe a few more points. I mean, this is interesting that I heard the word impact here a few times, and that's not exactly what observers would really look at in the past, you know, like, I mean, the impact of campaign. I mean, this is not so much, you know, in the remit of our observation. But here, I think where I would agree is that because of the social media world, I mean, I think we need to be able to right scale, you know, what we should look at. But normally we would just look at any violation as a violation and we would track it. So I would not get overexcited about impact, but I mean, I do have some understanding for this. And perhaps I will finish with a provoking question. I mean, do we really need electoral silence in this digital era? Isn't it actually demonstrating very well you know, how it is not really implementable, because it's something that we have no leverage over. I mean, when it comes to forcing the platforms to actually take it down, and do we need to really take it down? I mean, aren't we in a situation where basically this doesn't make any more sense, and it only demonstrates our big weakness that it is something that is not really implementable, and we should probably just live with this, that in this digital era it's simply nothing that we need to worry about, because it's not that people will make last-minute decisions based on what they see on Facebook or anything. So I will just finish with this provoking question, but thank you very much for the panel.
Anyone to react on that? Just from the side of ODIHR, I would like to say, of course, when we have missions in EU countries, it's much easier because there is a framework. There is DSA, you look at those, whether the country is complying with that. When we are observing in other countries, of course, some of the candidate countries, they try also to be in compliance here and there, of course, not fully. In other places, of course, there is a challenge. So how you do assess? For ODIHR, when the social networks are not considered as a media rather than as a campaign tool, all the commitments and international standards which are valid for proper traditional campaigning and media, of course, are valid for this part. But I mean, it's, as I fully understand and share what you've mentioned, there is a challenge there. There is difficulty there because in the online domain is completely different from the traditional campaigning, and it's very difficult to replicate all those standards which are relevant for traditional media, be it campaign, to online domain. It's very often a challenge.
Just on the point of impact or effectiveness, I entirely agree with you, and that's indeed my major point of probably frustration at this point in time, is that I think there is a major limitation, yeah, and I think we probably need to communicate about this limitation a bit more clearly. But the way it happens is, so as a mission we describe all of the various things that the national institutions have put into place. They have established all of these channels of communication, they have all of these various mechanisms, and so you describe all of this and you do diligent work. But then always the question comes from other stakeholders or from the journalists. They say, okay, so and how, and did it work? Did it work? Did indeed, you know, we've read about this and this and that in the media. So did it really happen? Were these tools effective? And so you're caught in, you take a next step in providing quality assessment of the different mechanisms that were deployed, but then you're caught with, you know, with a follow-up question. And I think that's where our limitation lies, unless we really are able to rely on the information from other national stakeholders that do this sort of analysis. But I totally agree with you.
Since it was provocative, someone should answer. I'm not coming from the legislative body, so we only had this task in hand. And when people report the election on cyberspace, we need to react. But I want to add to this one thing. When people post something on the night before elections or the day before elections, usually the algorithm will put this information on your feed on the day of the elections, because this is when people talk about it. So, and who is really breaching this silence then? Like the person who posted it the day before, or maybe the algorithm, right? Like how to even assess that? So it is a current challenge, and it is a very valid question. Thanks.
Septimius, I think, raised his hand, and then Olga.
Thank you.
Here, yes. Yes, Septimius.
I have a few more technical questions for Mrs. Wilczyńska. Sorry for my Polish, but so on one side, I was curious where most of the, let's say, disinformation, illegal content came from. Was it domestic or was it external? And when we talk external, I guess we know what we mean. The second thing would be related to the. In your work, which of the platforms was, let's say, with which you managed to do the most work, and which was the most reluctant to take actions, and maybe where were the main bottlenecks? And in terms of institutional collaboration, was it any collaboration with, or did you get any support from institutions, let's say more generally, who have the role of, I don't know, protecting the constitution, let's say, I know, I wouldn't say secret services because I don't know exactly how Poland works, but institutions which might monitor somehow with other types of tools the online space. Thank you.
Okay, so the first question, the question about the platforms. So, and it's a challenge. So I think the most content and accounts that we reported were to X. So the numbers vary from platform to platform, right? So, but from our data, the most responsive was TikTok, probably lesson learned. And when it comes to the others, they are usually on the similar level. So it's 75% of non-responding to our reports, maybe 80%. It depends on the platform. But also you need to have in mind that in some cases, so for X, you have thousands more accounts that you probably reported than on Instagram, for example. Yes, we worked with intelligence services. That was an initiative established by the Ministry of Digital Affairs. We had exchange of, well, mostly we exchange because they don't exchange of us. That's normal. But we shared our data with them when it was crucial. And I know that's the same case for the Ministry of Digital Affairs, which is the body that received all our reports, and they share if needed. And sorry, the first question was? Whether it was foreign or not. And how do you measure the attribution? How do you say, based on what would you say that it's foreign? Because like there are so many organizations, NGOs that analyze this information, and they say that this is Russian disinformation because of the content. But it's way more difficult to analyze the account. And it's super difficult for a normal institution to analyze the funding. So when we analyze this information, we have a team that focuses on FIMI, and they analyze Russian infosphere, for example, and they look what type of narratives are being transferred. But it doesn't mean that all the accounts that would share narrative that we would say is pro-Russian, it's not always the case that all of them are Russian funded or foreign agents I know it's not the good term to use it, but we also see how the narratives are being spread. So it's really difficult to assess, yes, that's involvement from abroad. And I don't want to make a clear statement on that. Of course, we probably had those, and in some cases, probably we can prove it, but it's not that easy to analyze it.
Yeah. Thank you for this opportunity. I have very short question about potential sustainability of the solutions, because with IT technologies, algorithm, AI is changing everything on a daily basis. So you can produce methodology which will work for year, 2, 3. It's like about drones. So during a month is not something fresh. Your enemy will produce something better. That's why after the next day after the producing your own solutions, you need to produce to start develop something new. So, and I don't believe that it's possible to have sustainable tools for solving the problem with, monitoring of the space, collecting the data, if it will not be some, educational courses developed together with those who are owners of the social media platforms. When I was listening that interesting guy from Meta, I didn't hear anything what, for example, Google is doing now. Like, they have a special course, trainings for those NGOs who are willing to collect the data about fake in a Google space for claiming to Google and to cooperate like that. So those who are working on algorithms need to cooperate with those who are monitoring the space, because we want to have clear, free and fair elections at the end. So my question is how to solve the problem with unsustainability of this IT situation, and how to predict this development without those who produce an algorithm. Because last point, last time before presidential and parliamentary elections in Ukraine, Meta changed algorithm and their policy 2 weeks before election day. And nobody knows about that. And, political actors try to spend resources, but it didn't work like that. So it looks like Meta decided to ban political activity, but without understanding what will be outcome at the end.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think I'm just following up on Olga's question, but in a different way. You asked a question about whether we are keeping pace. I think we need to be very careful about running and chasing these social media and these organizations which are creating these technological innovations. Because in my view, it's like you're chasing rainbows. You're not going to get to them. They are in business. I think our true north lies in the principles of credible electoral processes. And based on those credible, the principles of credible elections, they need to extract a set of strategic tools that allows us to be able to interrogate whatever platforms that are going to be dispensed out there. Otherwise, we're going to be we're going to be little robots and little bots, observers, trying to understand the landscape each and every day. So I think the approach for me would be, are there a set of strategic tools which can be adaptable, which can be changeable, perhaps when a new platform comes, but obtaining from the principles themselves, not the other way around, where we're chasing these corporates. I don't think we're going to catch up with them.
No, I fully agree, and we are assessing not only that part of the process, which it's broader, yeah. It's broader what we are looking at. It's in general the democracy, human rights, the possibility for voters to decide, and then the social media is just one element of our observation, and it should, of course, we should follow that. And it's impossible to catch up with the speed that they are developing. And what Olga was mentioning, and Tanya in her initial intervention mentioned that I'm speaking on behalf of ODIHR here, that for us specifically it's very difficult to just reach out to social networks in many countries where we are observing, just to get in touch with them, not just simply to have a meeting, or whenever we have certain discussions, to manage to have them on board and to share their views, just to hear what we are telling them. During recent years, it became even more difficult. So previously, at least, there was some kind of openness, willingness maybe to listen and to discuss. But these days, I mean, the doors are closed quite often, and it's very difficult when you knock and there is no answer from the other side. So, which is a challenge, but again, to echo on what was mentioned, we shall, of course, focus on the methodology, develop it, but not try to change based on what the social networks are doing, I think, because our work is a bit different than what they are doing. Of course, we shall raise all the issues that we hear, we see. We still try to reach out to them, to talk, to discuss. But ultimately, there are other institutions like EU. Yeah, they with their regulatory framework, they can have a certain impact. For OSCE, it's as a political body, it's close to impossible. So we cannot regulate. We cannot provide any framework for social networks. Our commitments and standards are just political, and it's very difficult to find the angle from which we would reach to social networks. I see that we bypass the time. Maybe to wrap up and to conclude, if we have 3 minutes, I really would like to hear one sentence or two lines from each here from our panel. What was the takeaway? What was the important takeaway from you from the discussion that we had? Tanya?
Yeah, I guess that we are improving our capacity, we are improving our understanding of how digital environment can or should be observed. I think we are improving our recommendations, but there are very clear limitations to what we are able to do as international observers, but also as observers as such. And again, underscoring the importance of partnership with those that can do much more than observers, than international observers and missions.
For me, it's the need to continue cooperating together beyond let's say, institutional divisions of national observations, technical assistance projects, or international observation, because that's an area where we need to really share the ability to exchange data and ability to go beyond the technical. I mean, I agree with what Mula said. I mean, we should not run after the companies, but we should try probably to interpret what they're doing. My big dream would be always to see a European tech, big tech in the future.
Thanks. Possibly we need to revise our roles as observers and our methods of observation completely, and view ourselves in a bit different role with different skills. We need to put a lot of energy to learn a lot, and it seems to be a very long way, though we need to hurry, and every day things change, but it is going to be a long way because technology is changing the world completely.
I think Domenico stole all of my points, so I definitely agree that we still need to improve our analytical and monitoring skills. It's an ongoing work, and with new tools and with the use of AI potentially. But the major point is that work is never done, never, because there is always another electoral cycle. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. On this positive note, Magda, I pass on to Stephanie, I understand, for closing remarks. Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure once again. Thanks to EPD for such an opportunity to be here. And it was really insightful and interesting to hear all the views during all these 2 days. Thank you.
Yeah, Lusine, thank you very much for super moderation, active and helpful of this great panel with good concluding remarks. I think this is a good guidance for us for the next steps and for the next work. I want to thank you, everybody, every single person who is here, contributing so much to our discussion, which is discussing, let's say, stormy weather on democracy. But I feel not lost in that stormy weather, because we are a good group of persons, and I think we are unified by a commitment for elections and for activity and for having a meaningful work together. So I understand for EPD as a takeaway, we should think further what we can do to promote this coming together and to make a good share of expertise, responsibilities, partnership, role, everybody. Not everybody should do everybody. I won't become an OSCE expert, and maybe any person will not be a financial expert, but we have to know whom to ask, with whom to cooperate, and where to reach out, and this will be relaxing for us and will improve our efficiency. I'm sure this could help us. So we have to know with whom we can cooperate. And by that we will increase trust in what is the important thing for us, which is the elections. And if we have a good group and knowledgeable people who are here, I'm sure we can come further for that. So now I say a big thank to everybody, and in order not to forget nobody, I have had here. So our main partners, you know, is the European Parliament yesterday, the DEC Group, and the ODIHR, thank you very much, and the German Marshall Fund. And not visible here, but also supportive, is the German Federal Foreign Ministry. They financed this conference, and it's quite sure that we can convene again next year and after next year. So hopefully, it's quite sure they will go on and support these events here. So, and the good idea and the new thing to have these breakout sessions, I want to say a big thank you to all the organizers, hosts of the breakout sessions, and I also hope we can continue and develop that method, because this brings the expertise. This is Future Shift Labs, the EDGE Foundation. It's the International IDEA, IFES, the Civic Resilience Center, our colleagues from Africa, the African Election Observers Network, AFEONET, NDI, and the Carter Center. Super, thank you very much for being here and having organized these breakout sessions. And big thanks goes to our group, to Adam Busoliano, who is the master of FURIC. Adam bringing together all the people, knowing everybody and knowing what everybody can contribute to this FURIC conference. It's Tobias Sofke, it's Thomas Vogel, co-director of the European Exchange. It's Matthias Meyer from the comms team, Liaison, Nika, Valeria, and Darina. Thank you very much to the whole team for helping us with that. And it's also, thank you. And it's Alicia and Jacek making photos and film and everything. And who else? Adam. Whom did I forget? Yeah, Adam. The moderators, for sure, yeah.
The moderators and all those who helped enormously to organize this event. So
good.
Thank you, especially Barbara and Holly and Francesca, yeah.
Good, Adam. Thank you very much. And now we have a last chance to talk today on elections. Reception on the first floor. And the event is sponsored by ODIHR. Thank you very much. And thank you very much to everybody, also those whom I may have forgotten. And see you next year at FURIC. Thank you very much.
Thank you.